For this 90s sports nostalgia video, I want to talk about the 1995 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And to begin, I just want to say I loved the Bucs back then, as they had some players I really liked. Moreover, I loved the unique orangeness of their uniforms, and I loved my Bucs Zubas. Although I understood how much of a losing franchise they were, I enjoyed watching the Buccaneers back then and didn't care what my friends and even some teachers jokingly said about my Tampa Bay Buccaneers fandom. But anyways, back to the 1995 Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as this year in Bucs history is more remembered for their offseason, in which I'll get to later on. But for me, this season got me excited because there was a chance that Tampa Bay could finally get to the postseason. So in the mid-90s, Tampa Bay was in the NFC Central, which was an ultra-competitive division back then. I think the best division in the mid-90s, as all those division games were going to be challenging. The Bucs started the 95 season with the win on the road against a Philadelphia team that I thought was good despite a historic collapse during the previous season, but it was great seeing a Bucs win with their orange creamsicle tops, which wasn't common to see because around this time, Tampa Bay would wear their white jersey tops at home. But anyways, the Bucs had an enjoyable win, and this was also the game where Ricky Watters had his for what quote after his effort was questioned during a pass play over the middle. So Tampa Bay started 1-0, but then reality set in with a couple blowout losses against Cleveland and Chicago. But then Tampa Bay, they came back with 3 close wins against a bad Washington team, an expansion team in the Carolina Panthers, and then against a bad Cincinnati team. Then against a talented Minnesota team, Tampa Bay won at home in overtime. The Bucs were at 5-2. Head coach Sam Wyche was telling the media 5-2, referring to his team's record, and I was excited, thinking that the Bucs have a chance to make the postseason, something football fans probably couldn't have imagined. As for the Bucs roster, there was quarterback Trent Dilfer, who was in his second season. Eric Rett, my favorite running back of all time, was in the backfield. Then I was a fan of wide receivers Lawrence Dawsey and Courtney Hawkins. Those two would also team up with the newly signed wide receiver Alvin Harper, who was the top wide receiver on the market heading into 1995. My basketball coach had to keep reminding me that the Bucs paid way too much for Harper. But anyways, on defense, linebacker Hardy Nickerson, one of my favorites of all time, safety John Lynch, and cornerbacks Charles Dimry and Martin Mayhew. And then I know there are 2 major names that I'm not naming, which I'll get to later on. So, I remember being excited at 5-2, but then once again, reality set in. The Bucs lost to a talented offensive team in Atlanta by 3 points, and then a loss at Houston. The Bucs are sitting at 5-4 with their bye week. Obviously, still in postseason contention. However, as mentioned earlier, the NFC Central was such a tough division, as Tampa Bay's schedule was really backloaded with NFC Central teams. Subsequently, a loss to Detroit, but then Tampa Bay won against the expansion Jacksonville Jaguars thanks to a missed 2-point conversion by the Jags. But Jacksonville was the last of the lower tier opponents, as Tampa Bay would then get blown out by Green Bay and Minnesota. And then I have to mention the moment I remember thinking that it's not meant to be was when Minnesota was really controlling the game versus Tampa Bay. And during that game, quarterback Trent Dilfer was ejected for throwing a punch at John Randall. And that was something to really watch live. But for the following week, surprisingly, Tampa Bay, they defeated Green Bay. At 7-7 after the win against Green Bay, they were still in the playoff hunt. I had some hope. But then 2 blowout losses and horrible performances against Chicago and Detroit. That Detroit loss really made me realize how much more talented Detroit was than in Tampa Bay. That 95 Detroit team was really talented, and they were playing excellent toward the end of the year. I liked being a Bucs fan back then, as I just enjoyed watching them play. And as I mentioned earlier, they had a lot of players I liked, and I loved those uniforms. In 1995, the Bucs had me excited by playing Philadelphia at the right time and winning close games against lower tier opponents. But with the games against the NFC Central opponents, I realized Tampa Bay, they had a long way to go to compete in that division. 1995 was a fun year to be a Bucs fan, but 1995 was also the year that really changed the direction of the franchise. Tampa Bay had a new owner in 1995, and after signing Alvin Harper, who was the top wide receiver on the free agent market, GM Rich McKay said, "We have stated from the beginning that the Buccaneers' new regime will include aggressive pursuit of free agents." Moreover, during the 1995 NFL Draft, Tampa Bay had one of the most impactful drafts ever, selecting future Hall of Famers Warren Sapp and Derek Brooks. And after the 95 season, Sam Wyche would be fired, and in would be Tony Dungy. He'd go 6-10 in his first season. But then in 1997, it was definitely a new era. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers would have a new logo and a new color scheme, and really made a statement during week 1 of the 1997 season. Link below for that video. I just want to say thanks for staying to the end of this video, as I really appreciate the support. Thank you so much.